Now, he famously promised his kingdom for a horse, but what happened to the body of King Richard III after his defeat at the Battle of Bosworth has remained a mystery for more than 500 years. Until now, maybe. Archaeologists in Leicester have been digging in a car park in the city centre. This morning they announced they'd made a discovery that could solve the mystery, as Anthony Bartram explains.
In a quiet Leicester street, crowds gather to hear word of the king. The search for Richard III's final resting place appears to be on firmer foundations today. Beneath a city centre car park, these trenches have revealed the medieval Greyfriars Church, and from there, more evidence has led them to human remains.
We have a man with what appear to be battle injuries, who suffered from severe scoliosis, that is curvature of the spine, respectfully but modestly buried in a place of honour in a friary church.
The team behind this dig say it has been mind-blowing. In just 3 weeks, they've uncovered part of the nation's history, which has been parked here for centuries. So far, the pieces fit with some historical accounts of Richard's death and burial after his defeat at the Battle of Bosworth, and could rewrite many of our history books.
Potentially it does change everything in terms of study of the real Richard III, not the Tudor myth.
A 17th generation descendant of the king's sister, Michael Ibsen, has given DNA samples to experts, and they hope to match them with the remains. 527 years after Richard's death, we must now wait at least another 3 months to answer the big question. Anthony Bartram, BBC News, Leicester.
Richard III, youngest son of Richard Duke of York and Cicely Neville, was born in Fotheringhay Castle on October the 2nd, 1452. The castle was the old Motte Bailey style, and all that's left now are some old lumps and bumps in a field, left to your own imagination. Richard became involved in a power struggle with Edward's Queen Elizabeth Woodville about the young king, who was the rightful heir but too young to rule, and he managed to imprison Edward V and his younger brother Richard in the Tower of London, and the two boys were never seen again. Middleham Castle is closely associated with King Richard III. As a young man, he spent several years at the castle, in the care of Richard Neville, Earl of Warwick, often known as the Kingmaker, learning courtly manners and the arts of war. After Warwick's death at the Battle of Barnet in 1471, he was granted Middleham by his brother Edward IV. Richard made it his principal castle in the north of England, and it was here that his young son Prince Edward was born, and where he died 10 years later in 1484. Richard himself lived only a little over a year longer, being killed at the Battle of Bosworth on the 22nd of August 1485. In 1472 he married Anne Neville, younger daughter of the Earl of Warwick, and through his marriage obtained the lordship of Barnard Castle. He was granted the lordship and castles of Skipton in 1475. With the great wealth derived from his estates and the royal favour of his brother, Richard became the dominant figure in the north, his power and status confirmed in 1483, when after a successful campaign against the Scots, he was granted an hereditary lordship over Cumberland and Westmoreland. Having a Neville wife, and being familiar with the area and its people, from his years among them during his youth, Richard attracted a large and loyal body of followers to his service, especially from the immediate vicinity of Middleham and the surrounding area of Richmondshire. The views from the battlements at the top of the keep were spectacular, giving all-round surveillance of the countryside. For its time, the accommodation at Middleham was palatial. Within the keep was the Great Hall, the Great Chamber, the Privy Chamber, a chapel and two small chambers within the turrets. All above, a very high basement, which contained the kitchen and a generous amount of storage space. What would normally be provided in the courtyards of a castle was here accommodated entirely within the keep, combining security with living quarters of considerable grandeur. Close to the castle is the base of the old market cross, known as Swine Cross. It is a rather shapeless lump of stone today, and thought to have been a statue of a boar erected to commemorate a grant obtained by Richard of Gloucester in 1479 for Middleham to hold a twice-yearly fair and market. However, it might equally have been a bear, the heraldic animal of the Nevilles. The church at Middleham, dedicated to St. Akelda, a Saxon woman murdered for her beliefs, was embellished by Richard III. It was here, in 1477, that he founded a college where priests were endowed to say masses for the House of York. Richard's college did not survive his death, but a college of canons under a different statute did continue, and was only brought to an end in Victorian period. One of the last of these canons was the author Charles Kingsley. Note the stained glass window portraying Saints Richard and Nan, and an heraldic altar frontal bearing the Plantagenet and Neville arms. Note also the stained glass window with the sunburst in it, another Plantagenet symbol. In August 1485, Henry Tudor, Earl of Richmond, who was a Lancastrian claimant to the throne, landed in South Wales and engaged Richard in battle on Bosworth Field on August the 22nd. Although Richard possessed superior numbers, a number of his key lieutenants defected, and refusing to flee the battlefield, Richard was killed in the battle, and Henry Tudor took the throne as Henry VII. This is the well that King Richard is supposed to have drank from during the Battle of Bosworth.
I can tell you that's no fun, bedding down in hedgerows and ditches every night for a week. Last night, we slept up on the hill. We could see the campfires of our enemy. They don't seem that far away now. They chose me because I'm very handy with a long bow. I took my weekly training very seriously, but never thought I would actually use my bow in battle. I'm worried. And as for my wife and children, well, you can imagine how they feel.
In August 1485, Henry Tudor, Earl of Richmond, who was a Lancastrian claimant to the throne, landed in South Wales
with a small army of mercenaries and exiled Englishmen. As he travelled east, he gathered more supporters, eventually reaching the battlefield with around 5,000 men. He lacked any battle experience, so to lead his army he relied on the veteran Lancastrian commander John de Vere, Earl of Oxford, who had recently escaped from prison. Meanwhile, King Richard, who had been expecting Henry's arrival, summoned his army, asking them to meet him in Leicester. King Richard's main supporters were John Howard, Duke of Norfolk, Henry Percy, Earl of Northumberland, and William Brackenbury, Constable of the Tower of London. The powerful Stanley brothers were supposed to be guarding the west coast of Britain for King Richard, but when news of Henry's arrival finally reached the king, it was not from them. Ambion Hill and the high ridge towards Sutton Cheney gave commanding views over the low-lying land to the southwest. Henry Tudor's army was camped out on the plain and would be advancing this way to do battle. Richard's large army is likely to have been camped along this ridge and probably as far as Stapleton, straddling the Roman road, the Fen Lane.
Richard III, born on October the 2nd, 1452, at Fotheringay Castle in Northamptonshire, was the last Yorkist King of England.